Welcome to episode 621 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Ben Hilton. He's Robby Lowe of YouTube fame. And today we've got some listener questions to answer. And honestly, just some general hype and excitement to dive back in after another international break is over. So, Robby, I ask you, it's been a while since Barcelona fans, I think, were not pining for the international break to be over, but for saying, we're actually upset that had happened. There were some scares, of course, with injuries that don't seem to be actual injuries, but does it ever really feel like a break for at least you and I?
No, it doesn't, because, we have to keep on the pulse of transfers or especially the injuries, constantly checking and knowing us. Something will inevitably happen at the very last second to ruin our week or month or whatever. So far, it hasn't happened. There was some with Lamine and everything, but I'm excited to get back into it. We're going to have to get really used to this because this is going to happen next month. It's going to happen the month after that and forever, I guess, from now on. But it's coming back. That's all I'm looking forward to. And I'm ready to be back watching the boys.
Yeah, it'll happen until all the players, I think, are injured. Until every single player injured.
Everyone does their ACL, and then everyone's coming back.
Yeah. Well, the other reason Robby agreed to come on, because we are, the two of us, promoting the watch-alongs that we are doing on Big Up. So, again, you can join his membership channel and community. You can join mine. Again, you can watch both of us at the same time, which might be a little disorienting, but you'll figure it out. And that link for Big Up is down in the show notes or the description, and as well as promoting YouTube, because that is where I have 20,000 subscribers finally.
Yeah, congratulations
to everybody for getting into that. And I will say, from that video, the one jersey that I think I got the most feedback on missing was that 14-15 season.
Yeah.
And with Neymar and everything. And I do visualize, again, Neymar in that jersey. And that's the one I have of Andres Iniesta. So, yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. I thought it was very similar to some of the other ones that I also picked. And so I guess not that it was an oversight, but anyway, that was the 20,000 subscriber. Thank you. So again, Robby Lowe is also a huge follow on YouTube. We can find his stuff down in the show notes and the description, as well as Big Up. And a reminder, too, that on Big Up, you can now join as free members of our channels without a promo code. So if you're one of my Patreons, you can also come on as a guest with a mic and a camera, or just a mic, and you can join me for that watch along. You can also get these shows without the ads on Patreon, and that's, again, as low as $3. And you're also guaranteed to have your question answered on the show whenever you ask one. And speaking of Patreons, all right, let's dive in. Here are the listener questions. First one from patron Thomas. What are your thoughts on how to maximize Gavi's abilities in Flick's system? Does he play in the double pivot or a more forward role? Also, your thoughts on his positioning. Does his work rate leave us too exposed, or could he benefit us in a more defensive role? Robby, do you want to field this one first, or do you want me to take it?
Sure. No, well, that's like 7 questions in one there, but
yes,
I basically, I think Gavi coming back will be an incredible tool for Flick, no matter where he plays. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Gavi has played in several different positions with several different responsibilities throughout his entire time in La Masia. And so it's not like his intensity in a certain position will be too much for us, leaving us exposed. He is very smart, and he is good at where he needs to be. He understands football. He understands his position incredibly well, and he can be coached to not leave us exposed in certain positions. So I'd never be concerned about that. But where would he be maximized, or where would be his ideal spot be? I think it has to be in the double pivot. Yeah, I want to see what you have to say about that, because I'm curious tactically more what you got.
Yeah, to add to your point, he did play at the U14. Remember, he was called up to the first team at 16s, but at the U14 level, he did play almost as an attacking midfielder, and then he did shift back for his final season in La Masia with the U19s. He was playing in more of a defensive position, not a defensive midfielder, because, again, he was so good and so much better than the 19-year-olds that he was playing against as 16-year-old, that, again, operating from a deeper position was just fine for him. I think the important thing about Gavi and what he, again, maximizes from the system isn't necessarily his positioning. What I guarantee is he's not going to be out on the left wing like he was playing as an inverted forward. That's what I can almost guarantee. But the importance of Gavi for Flick and his counter-pressing system is to win the second ball. And when Barcelona lost the season to Osasuna, it's because they didn't win that second ball. It's very reductive in saying, that's the only reason why. But no, he wins the second ball at a really high rate. And he does those little things that you need to in terms of even rest defense that I really appreciate and really enjoy. And I think as in part of that double pivot, and I do very much in what we're seeing now, see him as just simply an upgrade to Marc Casado. That's nothing against Marc Casado, but I mean, Gavi is one of the premier young players in the game. So you're just upgrading that position so much. And I not say that I don't want to underthink this a little bit, but I think the idea of Gavi winning the second ball, moving the ball in the middle field, I also think we're going to see even more like we saw before he got hurt last season. His close contact, I guess you want to say, I'm using the wrong terminology, but his associations, that's what I'm saying.
Combinations,
his close combinations, associations in the middle of the field for the first 2 months of last season before he went down were really encouraging. I thought that those skill sets could remind you that he is still so young, are just getting better and better. So to me, as I've said, I think I made my predictions before, if Gavi can come back even 85 to 90% of what he was last season, I think he's going to be a top 3 most important player for Hansi Flick this season and beyond. I'm very excited for Gavi's return. I not say more than anyone else, but he's been the one player that we have not yet to see under Hansi Flick. And
I'll say more than anyone else.
Well, let me follow up with another question for you from patron Eric. Okay. Between Gavi, Olmo, Pedri, De Jong, Fermín, Lopez, Casado, and then Raphinha, who's also technically played as a 10, they're all about to be healthy together at the same time. In theory, we're knocking on all the wood here now. Here we go. So once all are match fit, how do you best leverage that talent? I get rotation is needed, but who starts and who rotates? And Eric, it's no disrespect to your question, but I'm going to even make this more myopic in what we're focusing on for you, Robby, in that better yet, this whole idea is already this week. And fortunately, I think not all of them are completely fit, so some of this answers itself. But how should Hansi Flick rotate for Sevilla, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid, which is 3 games in 7 days against, again, Sevilla, which what you're going to get from them is who knows the last 3 seasons. Bayern Munich is Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid is Real Madrid.
Yeah, I think he mentioned the most important part of all of this is just rotation. That's the biggest part of having all of these guys back, because a lot of them do a lot of what the other player coming back does as well. Fermín and Olmo are similar in some aspects, and then Olmo similar to Lamine in some aspects, Pedri and Gavi. And so whoever is going to play in whichever game, I'm sure you could look at certain matchups, right? If you need someone to take somebody on in the middle of the park, maybe you'll take Olmo over Pedri or something. Or you want to play Lamine on the left or something insane. You play Olmo over on the right. It's just having the ability to rotate them and not risk injury and keep them at like a healthy level of game time, which is so difficult. We've seen all of these injuries coming up. It's just the most important part. Eric mentioned it in his question, and I don't know if there's an ideal. I don't think Hansi Flick knows if there's an ideal certain setup that he wants to play against these guys. Against maybe Bayern plays a little bit more open than Madrid does, and in that case, maybe you want to play Fermín against Bayern because he maybe can run a little bit faster or push a little bit harder than Danny can, and then Danny against Madrid. I don't know. It's just finding some sort of way to manage their minutes and eventually seeing what the best setup is. I don't know. I don't know if you see something that I don't there, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I'll put myself farther out on the limb here that I think Eric Garcia, Pedri, and Casado, did I get that right? Yep. Based on fitness, I think those are the 3 that start against Sevilla. I think you lock that in. That's a midfield 3 that should be good and start against Sevilla. And then against Bayern is where you reincorporate. As I said before, I think to your point, that game might be a little more open than El Clasico will be. So, and Dani Olmo has historically played well against Bayern Munich. So I'm going with some combination of, if you want to go Pedri, Casado, you can do that for Bayern Munich. If you want to go, I think De Jong also could potentially be that guy against Bayern Munich. I think the ground that he covers and the way that he does, I think supports that. And then you put Pedri next to him because again, we're not throwing Gavi right in just yet. But if you go De Jong and Pedri, this is again also if everyone is fully fit and whatever. But yeah, I go Olmo, Pedri, De Jong then for Bayern, and then Real Madrid. I'm loving it. Let's bring back Gavi. He's got some minutes off the bench against Sevilla, against Bayern Munich.
Yellow card in the 3rd minute.
He's hungry to start? Absolutely not. He's grabbing yellow cards. He's getting fouled. So I'm starting Gavi, and that's 3 games in 7 days to start Pedri. But I'm also hoping that the situation was that he came out in the 60th minute against Sevilla or Bayern Munich. So I'm going Pedri, Gavi, and I mean, you know what though? No, I'm going De Jong, Gavi, and Pedri as the 10. That's what I'm doing against Real Madrid. There it is. So we're going De Jong, Gavi, and Pedri as the 10. I'm going to put myself on a limb and say that is what I would do if all 3 of these are, or all 7 of these players are healthy. Raphinha is going to be out on this wing because Ferran Torres is healthy, and I would start Ansu Fati on the left wing, because here's another little add-on to this that, one of the biggest factors in all of this is that Lamine Yamal is coming off that minor hamstring injury, and I wouldn't necessarily want to start him. So I would hope that Raphinha starts on the right wing and Ansu gets that coveted start on the left wing against Sevilla. Again, it's not say it's a big game for him in terms of Sevilla, but it's a team that he played for. I know it doesn't help, but maybe it always matters just a little bit, that he came from them and their academy. But yeah, I would rest him, even if he's okay. I know he did full training today. He was on the group that won. They took that nice picture. But I would not start Lamine Yamal against Sevilla, and I would start him against Bayern and Real Madrid. I know you needed 3 points against Sevilla, because if you lose 3 points and Real Madrid win the game this weekend, now a Clasico, you're on par anyway. It's always a reminder that every game matters in the Liga for 3 points as much as El Clasico does. But obviously that's a swing, and it can change the momentum of a season and all that stuff. So I think in excruciating detail, that would be all my answers. Ansu start against Sevilla, Lamine starts against Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, and then Raphinha gets to start in both those games, in all 3 games, I should say.
Yeah, I think Pedri is going to he's going to play at least in both Bayern and Madrid, probably at least 75 minutes in both. And I would be surprised if he starts against Sevilla. Honestly, Hansi Flick has been good at managing his minutes, so maybe he does, because he does take him out in the 68th minute every single game. But I don't necessarily think he's needed. It might also be a good time to get a little run out for Olmo for 30 minutes. You could play Raphinha. You could play Raphinha centrally, then Gavi, not Gavi, Eric Garcia, and probably De Jong or probably Casado in the middle. But I think it's just making sure the main guys are healthy for Bayern and Madrid, and also have some first game experience in the past week ready to get into it. I don't know if having Gavi's first game back be Madrid is the best idea.
As a starter. No, I mean as a starter.
Sure, okay.
Starting him, I think he's going to get a run out against Sevilla and Bayern Munich. But I'm saying his first start, his third match, which, again, if he's training at full fitness, then you'd hope that would be the case. But all I know is that Eric Garcia should be starting against Sevilla.
Yeah.
That is the guarantee that I have. That is what I know.
Take all 90 minutes. You can have them. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the midfield is full, which is counterintuitive to the next question we have. Patron Daniel says, if you were managing the club and somehow found yourself with $75 million, that would be delightful, because there's a bunch of different payments that have still not come in, equaling about $120 million. So it'd be nice if just an extra $75 million popped up. We're burning a hole in your pocket. What positions would you reinforce, and with whom? Additionally, would you sell anyone to add to your spending power? And then Curry Boy in Discord also had a similar question. What signing should we be looking to do for next season, and who should we be selling? Now, I answered this pretty. I actually have names for you. Do you have any names for me?
I don't think I have a solid name. No, well, I have an answer to the second question, which is just I wouldn't sell anybody, because I think we've had so much difficulty selling players in the past 2 years anyway, because they can decide to just not go, that I think it's too speculative. Obviously, having 75 million with the state this club is in at all anywhere is speculative, but it's playing with it a little bit too much for my liking at the second question, that I don't know if we'd be able to sell them, even if we could, or we wanted to, or we decided to. So I'm going to not use that for whatever 3 players you bring up. I wouldn't play that into it. But yeah, I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, it's not based on his comments that he had this week, that being Vitor Roque. I think he's saying the right things for Real Betis to say, hey, I'm happier, I'm playing, I'm in a better position. In that, of course, he's playing. Why would he not be happier? He was just sitting on the bench. There was a lot of negativity around his signing. There was a lot of expectations and pressure. Of course, he's in a better headspace. And I would love if Vitor Roque returned and all worked out, But as I said, when he went on loan this season, I don't see how moving forward the club and the relationship with the agent and all those things wind up working out, which again is not great because of the age of Lewandowski and what you're expecting from him in the next season or two. So all that said, to increase the spending power, I think Vitor Roque would in theory be the odd man out in terms of, here's some spending power. You bought him for 35, maybe even take a loss on him, which seems nonsense because he'll be 20 next season. But again, if that's who you're going to use, because I think he is still an asset, if you will, and other players, you're just not going to recoup what it would be in terms of even their in terms of the what is that amortization. There we go. So in terms of amortization, you're also going to be getting something back to help you out there in response to other players who wouldn't necessarily give you the same thing. Because you think even Ansu at this point, I don't think Ansu gives you, by selling him, this the kind of the nest egg that you'd be looking for. That I just don't like. What are they going to sell him for? 20 million? I just think he, with his contract and coming up for the academy, in theory, he's almost kind of worth more to Barcelona financially to try to see where, again, you have to continue to send him out on loan to recoup enough of his career where you could sell him for some kind of substantial profit, which again is just, it's a sad thing, but that's why, again, start against Sevilla. He gets a hat trick. New Ansu, he helps Barca forever, and he's a legend. Great. Okay, so the three names I have for you, really just 2+1. They would never sell. Obviously, both of these players are not coming to Barcelona. They would not sell. And I took, though, however, for 75 million, I took their transfer market value. So in theory, these clubs are selling them, which they're not going to do, and they're selling them for the transfer market value, which is not going to happen.
Okay.
I'm going, believe it or not, Jules Koundé, who against Sevilla is going to play and start. We know that. His 100th match for Barcelona, he started 94 of the 100. So is Jules Koundé the right back of Barcelona's future? Yes. Do I believe in Hector Fort? Yes. But I also don't think that it doesn't hurt you to have a bunch of fullbacks either. So I would like to see Hector Fort get more time at left back. If anything, I'm selling Gerard Martin for 5 million in the offseason. I guess we're throwing his name in there. No offense to Gerard Martin. I haven't seen it yet. He's going to be 23 next year. I haven't seen it. So I'm going with Rico Lewis of Man City. His market value is 40 on Transfer Market, which seems insane because I don't think that Man City would sell him for less than 70. But hey, again, we're just pie in the sky, 40 million. I'm going with Rico Lewis because of his versatility at that inverted fullback spot. I think that would really help get the best out of Lamine Yamal. The idea of Rico Lewis and Lamine Yamal is tantalizing to me to the highest umpteenth degree. I think his ability to invert also improves the idea and concept of a double pivot. It allows you in your rest defense to basically spread out a 3 behind the ball. I think he's a player that's getting better and better. He's 19 years old or whatever he is, 18, 19, whatever he is. And then again, Hector Fort, I know he's a right back, but I think he's done well enough at left back that he's another option you have who's getting, not to say getting younger, but these young players are ready to play already. I mean, we talk about burnout as being the one thing that's kind of keeping some of these prodigies back, but players at that age are more and more ready to start. Speaking of, John Duran, who is a player who I've seen, the Colombian striker for Aston Villa, he's not owned by Chelsea, right? He was just bought by Aston Villa, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I think Chelsea were just this close to buying him, but also I also think everyone's owned by Chelsea, so I get confused sometimes. But anyway, Duran is 20 years old, has not played a lot of minutes yet. I saw him as a teenager for Chicago Fire, so I did get to watch him like pretty intimately in MLS, but he has all the tools that you'd want in this counter-pressing number 9 position for Hansi Flick. And I think that he is, it's really hard to project the star number 9s of the future. It's almost impossible. But of what I've seen, I put him on a very short list. 3 to 5. He's going to be top 3 to 5, I think, in 5 years' time in terms of strikers. I think he is that good. I think he's special in the air. He gets a good boot on the ball, makes up ground quickly, just causes a lot of havoc. And he's going to continue to improve. And he's also, Transfer Market has him at 35 million. So there it is. There's your 40. There's your 35. Those are my 2 picks. My third pick I guess I had to add a defensive midfielder, because it seemed like Barcelona always need another. But I put Lamine Camara of Monaco. That's a player I like. It's a player I think is, a tidy player. and I think he also has the physical tools to really do well at a higher level. He was 15 million on transfer market. As much as I like him, though, I like Marc Bernal a lot more. And I think that Barcelona, between Gavi and Pedri and Casado, they also kind of have enough double pivot for the future if Hansi Flick is the guy for a while. So, I'm kind of set with where Barcelona are. That's why so for 75 million, I went fullback / defensive midfielder invert, and I went with a striker while selling again potentially Vitor Roque and Alonso.
Well, I don't think Ansu and Vitor Roque are going to bring much money. I don't think I've watched most of Vitor Roque's games this year, and I'm not impressed. Obviously, he still needs time to get everything together and get acclimated to the system. He seems to not have much to do there. I think Betis is just not a fun side to watch unless you're watching Lo Celso right now. And so it's not the most fantastic position for him to be in, but he just continually misses chance after chance. And maybe he'll put it together, maybe he won't, but I can't see him going for much more than 20 either with Ansu, where he is in the past, month of football. So there's obviously a lot more time for that to go. But we're just going on what we have right now. And going to Rico Lewis, I think, is a very interesting option. Obviously wouldn't happen. Man City and Pep would not let him go anywhere. I like the profile. I think we saw a little bit of it early on when Cancelo last season when I was actually playing right back. That didn't happen too much. But I'm not in love with Rico Lewis, and just because I don't love the idea of being so unrealistic. I think John Duran could go somewhere. I don't think I can't say he's going to be the next few years, the one top 3 to 5 striker, because he hasn't started a game for Aston Villa yet. I'm looking at his transfer market right now. He scored 5 goals with that in 7, 8 appearances, 10 appearances. So I think it's very optimistic, and he's the person everyone is talking about. If you're listening to any Premier League football podcast, it's about John Duran. That's how impressive he is.
Really? See, I don't listen to those, so I don't know. But all right.
No, it's what everyone's telling me. I don't listen to them. Only the Barcelona podcast. So I think John Duran would be a fantastic signing. We could put him in the team tomorrow and he would impact the side, even though I just criticized him for 3 minutes. Rico Lewis, in theory, it works a lot. Maybe he could play the Kimmich position from Hansi Flick's old Bayern team, and I could see how it works. I can very well see Duran. I love the signing, and I think he could. I don't see him being worth more than 65 million after this season. So even if he's outstanding, he gets the starting spot tomorrow, scores 25 goals in the Prem. I don't know if they could walk out there and charge over that, like significantly over that, even considering it is the Premier League, just because of the just lack of significant minutes. I don't know. Maybe that could change after a year of fantastic football. And if he scores 25 goals, I'm probably wrong. But there's still a lot to see from him. And so I think he could be a deal. Everyone is looking at him. And so there might be a bidding war. And so that could push the price up. I like it a lot. I can't speak a ton on Kamara. Again, like you said, the profile seems interesting. I don't think, though, with Bernal looking so good, obviously we're without him for a year, but he was fantastic. I think Casado is really good so far. I really like his profile at the very least as a depth midfielder behind Gavi or with Gavi or behind Pedri. He can do a lot. And I don't see the team needing to spend that money right now. And with the team being so broke, it should be focused on positions that desperately do need, like maybe a winger who can take players on, who's not a 17-year-old, would be interesting. But again, they come for a certain price I think, that we can't afford over that.
Yeah, I think Nico Williams would be the answer there. I think Nico Williams, there's no reason why. I mean, I think, with him not being bought, people are kind of turning on the idea of him. He got the boost.
They definitely are.
At the stadium and all that. So I would understand that. I mean, I think the player that, if you had, say, 120 million that I'd go for is Florian Wirtz. I think he is such a difference maker, but I also, I'll put on the record early. I think Man City are going to buy him and replace him with De Bruyne. I think that is the idea. Yeah. And I think if that was not the idea for Man City to pay 120 million for him, I think he'd already be at Bayern Munich. So that's like my hot takes on all of that. But yeah, if I could pick any player with unlimited budget, I'm going with Florian Wirtz. I think he would fit the system so well. Even though, again, Bayer Leverkusen, they take a lot more risks than even Hansi Flick's team do, but the risks he takes are so solid and so smart. So yeah, I mean, I guess 75 million, I broke it because obviously Bayer Leverkusen are not going to sell for anything less than 100 million. 120 is what I've seen, but I don't think that those numbers are tenable anymore. But yeah, 100 million. And it's so crazy because he tore his ACL a few years ago, and you're talking about that's why I have confidence for Gavi, just because Florian Wirtz came back and was his best, and he tore his ACL at a very similar age. So, all right, last question from our Patreon. Number 6, the Great 8. How should Barca adjust to Szczęsny's distribution abilities level against high pressure? While Lewandowski gives you somewhat of a number 9 hold-up option, I fear he's not what he necessarily could be. So if he's hurt, is there a backup? I know this is two very different ideas that are kind of combined together. But yeah, I mean, Szczęsny's distribution abilities and that level, I kind of said that I think he should, no offense to Inaki Peña, but I think he's a number 1 against Sevilla, and he's just a number 1. I think that's why he was brought in. That's why he's brought out of retirement. Huge shot stopper, as we know. His distribution abilities, they're not great, but I also, they're not terrible. They're passable. I think they're very similar to Inaki Peña's. I think when we talk about Ter Stegen, his distribution abilities, it's elite. I mean, we're top level, but for Szczęsny, yeah, it's not that, but it's I don't think it's much dissimilar from Inaki Peña.
No, I remember several games last season where Peña had he wasn't very good at picking out fullbacks on the wings, and that really caused the team to suffer in possession, especially without Busquets in the middle to help build around. And I made a video on Szczęsny, that's not how it's pronounced. I'm just going to call him Wojtek because I know that's correct. He is, a lot of people were saying he's not as bad as we were making him out to seem. We might be Barcelona. He might have not played for a team that's known for their incredible possessional ability, but at the very least, for the ability of being able to pick out fullbacks or go long with the ball, he should be just as good, at least as Iñaki Peña, if not as Ter Stegen, at least at picking somebody out far away. Is he going to be in that close play with Kubarsi or Nigo or Araujo eventually as good as Ter Stegen? Probably not, but most goalkeepers aren't. And realistically, I think, like you were saying, he does take the job probably pretty easily from Peña. They tried to talk like that wasn't the case. I think that's just for morale reasons. I think it's his job to lose. But there's actually, so I made a video on Wojtek and whatever his history and coming to Barcelona. And a bunch of Polish people loved it. They were so excited that 2 Polish players were going to play for Barcelona. My landlord is Polish, and he went on a rant about it. But there's a saying for the Polish national team. I don't know the word, but it's about how Poland plays. And it's just that Szczęsny kicks it up to Lewandowski. He collects it. And that's the only way this team plays. It's just Szczęsny booting it up to Lewandowski and then figuring it out. So at the very least, he can pick him out. So I'm not worried about that. I think the mention about Lewandowski's possessional abilities and hold up play is interesting, though. And I do want to, what do you think about that? Where do you think that's going to go? What do you think?
Not saying I don't care about Lewandowski's ability to hold up the ball, but what Lewandowski has done so far to start this season is all we need from Lewandowski. And that's all, as in viewers of football. What you see from Lewandowski this season is putting the ball in the back of the net. And his hold-up play has not been great, but he's also being fouled at a higher rate this season. Will his back hold up with the way he's getting fouled this season on the long balls? I'm not sure. That would be the concern. But in terms of hold-up play, I said it's been enough of what it needs to be. And really, the whole outlet that Barcelona has is through the wings. The balls out to Koundé that immediately get to Lamine Yamal are more important than a long ball through the middle. And as I said, too, the pressure really isn't on Lewandowski. It's on that midfield of whoever it is, Eric Garcia, Pedri, Gavi, De Jong, to win the second balls. Because I think we're going to wind up saying, oh, De Jong doesn't win enough of those second balls, and that's going to be a bigger concern than Lewandowski. I'm not saying that De Jong in particular, I'm not trying to pick on him, but I'm saying is if Barcelona, if their midfield is overrun by Bayern Munich, or it feels like they're turning it over on these long balls and they're being forced to boot it upfield. Again, Lewandowski is going to get the criticism, yes, but I think there's going to be as much criticism in the midfield than for Lewandowski. And speaking of that long-term injury, I got one from Frederick from Facebook here. Considering Barca's recent injury history and all the games and all these things, do you think that a team can handle if we lose Lamine Yamal to a long-term injury? You're already saying no because I sent you the questions early. But yeah, he's being overplayed and all that, and I completely agree with you. I think pundits smarter than us are not only saying that he is the most informed right winger in world football, but he's arguably been a top 5 player to start the entire season in world football. That is just how important he's been, not just for Barcelona, but in general. And you throw out the idea that he's 17. He's been incredible. And just the function of the space that Raphinha and Lewandowski, and I have a question on this that we'll do in a second here about Barcelona's best player to start the season. Best player is never that important. And Lamine Yamal is Barcelona's most important player. That there's no other question to that. Since Lionel Messi had his press conference, Barcelona has not had a player that required the attention from a defense the way Lamine Yamal did. Nope, that's all I said. That, and what I'm really talking tactics there. That no player has required a double team on the wing that Lamine Yamal is requiring. There is constant sliding. Either the defensive midfielder or the left center back has got to come over and help with him consistently. And that gives you space in the middle field for what is the number 10, which again, the reason why I think this same formation didn't really work under Xavi is because Lamine Yamal was still getting 1v1 situations, as in, and I know he was still prodigious last year, but there was less of a game plan built to cut off his space. And his associations with Koundé are getting better and better. So between the attention that Lamine Yamal draws, everything would close down. Dani Alma wouldn't be as good. Lewandowski wouldn't be as good. Raphinha wouldn't be as good. It would just, the ripple effect and the domino effect would make this team look not what they are, which is all conquering at the moment, with the exception of the Osasuna game. And they would look just above, they would look like Barcelona, but I think they would look much more like Barcelona from last season than they do from this season.
Yeah. Lamine Yamal him going out would be catastrophic. And whoever asked this, Frederick, you got to knock on some wood right now, man. I can't believe you even had the audacity to ask that question. They can't create without him in the same way. I mean, no team can do it. And I've seen too many of Raphinha and Ferran Torres trying to take guys on one-on-one and not just passing it back to the midfielder. I can't do it again. And that is so scary, to be so reliant on this very important ability of your team. And on top of that, what we just talked about with Koundé, getting the ball over to Lamine with not distribution, but getting the ball up the pitch away from your third of the pitch. He's so incredibly important to this side. And I don't know, he is getting played a lot. Hansi Flick seems to have these numbers or whatever, the stats that show these guys need rest. And he keeps saying Lamine is fine. I don't know what numbers he's looking at, but hopefully he's right. And we'll see what happens. There's nothing really we can hope or say about it. When a player is that good, they just get played. It's what happened to Pedri. It's what happened to Messi but he was a little bit older. So the difference maker between guys that, can excel, they get to the top level. That what happened to Messi and Cristiano is that bad comparison. But what happened to Pedri and Gavi now too is the reason that they were, it like suffocated a little bit of their rise to the top, that they got injured and it took them away. And the difference maker between them and people that can keep that going or keep that same stardom is staying healthy, because they are going to get played them out. It happened to Wayne Rooney and he got injured all the time too. And he had to suffer through that at the latter stages of his career, but it's dangerous. And then he asked also, could Fermin Lopez be the biggest midfield talent we have at the club? I mean, sure, I could host the opening ceremony of the 2026 World Cup with Shakira, but is that going to happen, or is it the case? I don't think so. I mean, not with Gavi and Pedri. I don't know where you consider like young talent versus proven talent. I would say, I'm the biggest fan of Fermin. My channel is built on a video about Fermin that did incredibly well.
Right.
So I'm just comparing him to the rest of the guys at the club. I don't think he is astoundingly better. I think he offers a different profile than a lot of these guys with his aggression and his intensity, at least in the final third. We have that from Gavi and Casado a little bit, and a midfield or just a team of Fermin, Raphinha, Casado, and Gavi. I just feel bad for the shins of the other team, but it's exciting. And yes, he is an incredible player and he's good. Is he the biggest midfield talent? In my opinion, no. Dan, do you disagree with that?
No, it's Gavi, it's Pedri, it's Guy Fernandez, and then I think it's Fermin Lopez. I think in that order. Actually, probably Marc Bernal, then Fermin Lopez. Even.
Yeah.
And this is no knock on Fermin Lopez. Again, he's been really clinical, and I think he's been really important. And I think, again, to be Barcelona level, I'm not saying he's not Barcelona level. I'm saying that I don't think he's the biggest midfield talent that the club has. I don't think that's a risky thing to say at all. I think, Gavi, Pedri, you're talking about some of the best in their position at their age group as far as younger talent. And again, I really back what I've seen from Guy Fernandez so far. He is struggling to adapt to Barça Athletic. He's had some good moments. He's had some not so great moments. But then I go, oh wait, he's 16. This doesn't matter. Forget about it. And it's fine. And then Tony Fernandez, I'm not counting him as a midfield talent. He's a forward. That's the reason I didn't say his name. And there are also some huge big midfield talents, but any other midfield talent in the academy at the moment, I do think that Fermin Lopez, as a proven commodity in the first team already, would probably be higher on that list for me than the other midfield talents in the academy. And then I said, except for Marc Bernal, who it's a shame because, we saw the 3 matches and 3 matches we saw. Now I'm not saying overrating him, but now I'm rating him the way I should have, which is saying he's guaranteed to be in Barcelona's first team as long as he comes back in some semblance of himself. So, yeah, Marc Bernal solves so many problems for you if he is as good as he was through 3 games. All right, speaking as being good and beginning to be overrated, maybe, Marc Bernal, I'm not calling him overrated, but I'm saying I might do that in my mind. Like, oh my gosh, he's going to solve his problem when he comes back. But Raphinha, is Raphinha becoming a bit overrated in the way, and I said we here, I think I might mean I think I was looking in the mirror when I came up with this question. Am I overrating him? And I'm saying this coming off a brace for Brazil, by the way. But gosh, Raphinha has been so good. And I think maybe I'm almost overrating him because I was not even lukewarm, but I think so many people were like, okay, yeah, it's Raphinha. I hope he can be worth 55 million. But now I look at him and I'm like, hey, this guy is just not talked about around these other talents that equal to the numbers he's putting up and the workload he's put up. And I think the one counter argument that I keep seeing is that, so he did this against Real Valladolid. He did this against Young Boys, but he has to do this. He has to be this Raphinha against Bayern, against Real Madrid. He has to do it in the biggest moments, in the biggest games this season to earn the credentials that I feel like we're giving him. That is the one counter argument I've seen as to, why we might be overrating him a little bit.
I don't think we are overrating him at all. I think he deserves it, not just for the numbers. Obviously, the stats are, exciting, whatever. But he's playing well, and we're seeing it on the pitch. We recognize how good he is. And the only thing here is that I think when these numbers don't necessarily show up anymore, say, he becomes more of the pass to the assist guy, or something happens for like a stretch of 4 games, maybe the upcoming matches, which are the most important of the season so far, he doesn't put up any numbers or anything. I think we will see how shallow the support for Raphinha is, because we remember the history of him being a right winger behind Dembele who couldn't take anybody on and was rather disappointing for how much the team paid for him. I think the support for Raphinha is a little shallow. And so when those numbers dry up, it may not be shown, not necessarily from you, from people on Twitter, probably, and just culés in general, it's probably not as astounding as we feel it is now. And I'm not saying I'm innocent of that either, because I think he isn't the most flashy player necessarily, or exciting player just to watch. I don't care, like Ronaldinho, I don't care if you get an assist or score a goal. You just break somebody's ankles and I'll have my week made. It's different with Raphinha. And so I'm interested to see when those numbers aren't necessarily popping off like crazy. I don't think they will continue doing that. When that happens, is Dan Hilton from the Barcelona podcast still going to be overrating him?
Yeah, probably, because what he gives you defensively and the way he fits in Hansi Flick's system, I'm going to make sure that even if he's not contributing goals, because again, right now we've said it seems almost unsustainable based on his history. Through 11 games, he has 11 goals and assists, which already matches more than half of his goals and assists with the team from last season, which were 21. So even if he's not contributing goals, which I think to your point of that shallow support he has, is where the basement kind of falls out. When he's not contributing goals, I think it is more difficult to look at him in a game and say, this is what he contributed. But his defensive effort and the way that he just affects the game, and even his versatility, they can play as a number 10 and the wing, that he almost seems like you don't need to take him out because he can adapt to wherever else other players can play in their best positions. He's just been so essential. Here's a number, the stat that kind of gives me pause as to why I don't think the floor is going to drop out on him this season. He's created 32 chances in 9 Liga matches so far. So again, 11 goal contributions, but 32 chances in 9 Liga matches so far, the most by any player in the top 5 leagues. The closest to him is Saka for Arsenal with 27. Since 2003, which is the year that this data became available, this guy named Xavi Hernandez, he had 34 chances created in 2008-09. The only time for Barcelona that a player has created more chances than Raphinha through 9 league games. This other guy, Leo Messi, created 31 chances in 9 matches in 2014-15. Neymar created 31 in 2015-16. The only other 30 chances created since, again, that 2003 season for Barcelona was Xavi in 2009-2010. So the amount of chances he's creating through 9 Liga matches, and again, a lot of that is skewed by the Real Valladolid game. Some of it, again, it's not skewed by young boys. So really just the Real Valladolid and, even Rayo Vallecano, that was a 1-goal game. Valencia, that was a 1-goal game. So those chances that he's creating seem sustainable to me. It's whether or not Barcelona are going to be clinical with their chances and whether or not Raphinha is going to be clinical with his. But his set-piece delivery has been awesome, and I don't think that has to do whether or not you're playing Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. Set-piece delivery, and he's just finding the ball really well. Even the PK he took against Brazil, that's a level of confidence that I don't think, ever seen from Raphinha. Because even with Leeds United, he was just the star for Leeds United. And to star for Brazil, to star for Barcelona, I think it's, again, a level of confidence we have not seen from him. And I continue to be really excited about the idea of Raphinha, which gives us our, I guess, most difficult question and our last question. Robby, who has been Barca's best player to start the season? There was a lot of candidates: Raphinha, Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, Inigo Martinez, Pedri, Cubarsí, Koundé, Casado. But I'm saying pick one.
I think so. I was looking at this question. I had a couple different ways I wanted to answer it, but I think I rule out the top third of the pitch, which is wild. I'm gonna do that because I think it's Lamine. It's Lamine out of all of those guys is the most important. But I'm gonna rule them out because I think this team would score enough goals to get points without any whoever is there. If it's Danny, if it's Fermin, if it's Pedri, if it's Raphinha, if it's Lewandowski, if it's Pau Victor, if it's Ansu, maybe they would have figured it out enough to scrape by. I think there's one guy who is more significant than anyone else right now. That this team, without him, we would be looking at a Ronald Koeman-esque start to the season. And it's got to be Inigo Martinez for me. I think without Inigo, the excitement that we have about how cool and great this team is playing doesn't exist because we get blown out in behind every single match. We've seen it. Cubarsí with Sergio Dominguez or Eric Garcia. It's not enough. They're not good enough right now together to take that on. And it would have been. I don't even want to think about that because we've seen it. We've seen the team get exposed without Inigo back there, and I don't even think Inigo is that great. He's not fast. He's not tall. He's not that strong. He just is good. He's well positioned most of the times.
I'll push back on the strong. I think he's
right, but we don't look at him like we look at Araujo. That's kind of the difference maker I'm making here. And at the very least, no one expected it at all from him. I didn't love him last season, and I know he was good. He's like a history of being great in La Liga. I think La Liga Michael on Twitter is going to be yelling at me for not praising how good he was historically, but he's proven it, but he didn't prove it to us last season. He did not look good for Barcelona, be it because he didn't play that much or whatever. He's I think he's the most important piece of this team. He deserves to be the most valuable player because without him, it would have been an embarrassing start to the season, I think.
Well, I don't think even, again, the Leo Michael, who someday he'll be on the show, for Real Sociedad and Athletic Club throughout the years, honestly, Inigo Martinez to me reminded me more of PK, because PK, as much of a club legend he is, there were up and down moments, remember, throughout his career. And I think for Inigo Martinez, it was the same thing. Like, he got hurt a lot at certain times, and it took him a few weeks and months at times to come back from those injuries. So there were moments with Athletic Club when he wasn't perfect. There were moments for Real Sociedad before that where I don't think we were talking about him as one of the top center backs in the Liga. I think he wound up being he's one of the best non-Barca, non-Real Madrid center backs, and that was the way that we spoke about him. And I think that was fair. But again, like, no offense to Real Sociedad or Athletic Club, because in the Liga they go par for a while, but the exposure you get, the pressure you get, and all that stuff for Barcelona is just a different level. And he saw that last season when he arrived. And I think there's a fair argument to that. You know what's crazy? A player I think we're underrating a little bit, which is nuts, is I think even myself, I look back to my notes about the 5 headlines. I'm not saying Cubarsí is the best player. Just hear me out on this. Cubarsí is almost being underrated this season because he was so excellent in his first 3 months last year when he was 16 years old, turning, I think he turned 17, I think, with like a month or two. Up. He's still just 17. And and I can recommend this to you or to a bunch of people. The Tifo Football with the Athletic, that crew did kind of a deep dive on like the next generation of players, and they did something on Cubarsí, and his advanced metrics are just as good as they were last season. He is so pivotal and crucial with the ball at his feet that the defensive stuff he is given is totally average, but because of what he does when Barcelona are in possession, which they have been, they're averaging like 64% possession so far this season. This isn't a knock on Inigo Martinez. I'm saying is that we're almost underrating how good 17-year-old Cubarsí has been this season, that I do take a little bit away from Inigo Martinez. And I love that you kind of threw out the attackers. I love that, because I said best player is in a way different than most important, because Lamine Yamal has been the most important player. And as far as Pedri, Pedri has been essential to that midfield. I would put him as again, maybe second most important player that Barcelona have had. Koundé's been so good, but I think I'm going to have to go with Raphinha again with best player, just because his versatility and what he's contributed so far this season has, again, I think when I think of the first 2 months of the season, this is all I'm doing this on. I'm almost even throwing out the numbers. If I close my eyes and I think Hansi Flick's Barcelona, I see Raphinha's face celebrating. And I think that's all I'm going off of. That's all I'm going off of, just those vibes. So I say it's Raphinha, but if you also argue with me that best can also mean most important, this is like in the NBA when you do like MVP voting. Totally understand Lamine Yamal, sure. Your argument for Inigo Martinez, great, perfect. Yeah, of course, I get it. Because, yeah, they're outscoring opponents, but you also can't concede. And Barcelona had to fix their defensive issues, I thought, this season more than their offensive issues. So the fact that Inigo Martinez has been that important, the fact that he really hasn't had a natural, when Bernal went down, and even Bernal was 17 years old in front of him. And then you have Casado being a first teamer for the first time. Is Pedri a natural destroyer? No, not really. And they're also playing a high line and taking a lot of chances. And you said, Inigo Martinez, you're right. He's not the fleetest of foot, but he's been just as good as you need. So I think there's a really compelling argument for that, as well as, again, Koundé. We cannot forget just how important he is and how much of an Iron Man he is. So I almost think we're punishing him by putting him at right back. So I think you have a lot of candidates as who is Barca's best player, which is good because it means they started the season well, which they have. And speaking of starting the season well, last little topic here. Now, Barça Femení, I don't actually know if we can say they started the season well. They've only lost one game. It was that 2-goal loss to Man City in the first match of the Champions League, Women's Champions League. But then they followed that up yesterday with a 9-0 thrashing of Hammarby. To be honest, having watched them the last few seasons, the Pere Romeu era, who took over for Geraldes, it has not gone perfectly. They've looked like they need some punch, some hunger, and that kind of has been the case with Barça Femení over the last few seasons, where if they are motivated, and not motivated, they're motivated, but if they look like they want to destroy their opponent, if they look like they want to be what I've called them for the last 5 years, the difference is with Lamine Yamal and Messi. Here's what I'll say. I've yet to call Lamine Yamal inevitable. Once that's kind of the Barcelona podcast seal of approval, I guess you will, about like Barça Femení, when they're at their best, are, again, the only other person I ever use this word is Messi, is that there's something inevitable. They're going to win. This thing is going to happen because they're better. And Messi was inevitable. Barça Femení have been inevitable. That's what I say about, the perfection that they've had. And that is what they are. They're pining for perfection. So their slow start for them this season is only in terms of the past and their own standards, if that makes any sense. So do I think in match day 6, when they meet Man City again in a Champions League for that return leg, I think they have the ability, but they could completely blow them off the field. So for Barça Femení, it's this weird thing where it's like they're not starting the season as well as they could, but there's a switch that they could easily flip. I mean, immediately. Like Alexia Putellas is starting. She looks healthy. But Mati is healthy and starting. Summer Perella has yet to play this season. Claudia Pina is still becoming a starter and looking more and more important. Iwe Pajor is not combining well with Caroline Graham-Hansen just yet. But Caroline Graham-Hansen still looks the way she looks. And once Pajor and CGH really start to figure out their chemistry, and again, working through Pina through the middle, this team still, with Mappy Leon, and Paredes has also not really been healthy, hasn't been the best to start. And Catacol is also, what we saw from her at the Euros with Spain now last summer, she's not really looking in her best form yet either. And same thing with Rolfo. Rolfo, to me, does not look healthy at left back. And I know people are arguing that maybe not in her best position, but she's good enough to be a starter, but you don't start her over some of the wingers. It does look like they're missing Mariona just a little bit in terms of solidifying your depth at the forward spot and her versatility as well. But I just think the potential of this team, once they put all this together, once Samra gets back, and she's still just 21 years old or whatever she is, 22. So yeah, I mean, I think Barça Femení has started late or started slow, if you will. But again, this is a team that knows we have to be our best in April and May, and there's absolutely no reason why they cannot reach the level they need to in April and May and really turn it on. You just worry about that switch. Like if you don't turn it on by, half a season, is that who you are, right? Like if you can't really flip the switch and become that all-conquering side. And then again, you look at the numbers though, what I'm saying, and you look at the score line, doesn't make any sense. Because they won 7-1, they have a 9-0, they have a 10-1, right? And those are the expectations, but I'm saying is the eye test of what I've seen is not equal to how good they need to be even come the spring to win the Champions League again, which is, again, anything short of a trouble with this kind of team feels like a bit of a disappointment, which that's the standard they've set.
Do you see any reason for that depth or quality? Like I don't watch enough Barça Femení to really speak on it. Like I know what I'm talking about, and I know that's not good. I need to do better than that. But do you see any reason for that depth or insane quality in more or less every position, or have that ability to just figure it out everywhere and just have it work despite not everyone not necessarily being in form or coming back from injury or whatever the case is? Do you see any reason for that to change over the next few years? Are they going to be able to do that 3 years from now, just like they've done it today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, between like Kika Nazareth is a young player and she's looking good already. Like the idea that Kira Walsh isn't a guaranteed starter in there and she was going to go to Arsenal and all that stuff, like the depth this team has, the money they're willing to spend on additional depth as well. And then again, they have arguably the best U21 player in the world in Mickey Lopez, who's a future star. So there is no reason why this Barcelona Femení team should not be able to continue on what they're doing. Because even if Catacol, who is still a U23 player, if for some reason they say, hey, she's really out of form, it's not really working, and they decide to put in Ellie Roebuck, who they signed from Man City in the offseason, then she's a starter, and she's like 28. So there is no reason why, with the project they built, that other players who are young will not continue to sign for them. Again, Claudia Pina is, U24 still? So Claudia Pina is just getting better and better. Patrity is still 27 years old or 28 or whatever. Bonmati is still not 30. Putellas, I mean, yeah, again, she's long in the tooth, but she is just hit 30 years old. And again, Rolfo's under 30. And as players like Mappy Leon are not to say aging out, but her and Paredes, as they continue to age out, then Engen has come in and, she didn't look good as a defensive midfielder. They signed Walsh, but now she's a consummate starter at center back, and it's hard to replace her. Lucy Bronze leaves, but Onabate is arguably one of the best players at that position. So I think this team is strength to strength, continues to have the depth, and has built a project that players want to be a part of. And as I've said, I do recommend my YouTube shorts, I did a whole week on the future of the Barça Femení players. And those numbers, they do not have a lot of views because nobody's Googling those names because they're 2-3 years away, some of them, and they might not get the chances. But when I did that research, it was a reminder that Barcelona, their academy is not just the boys, but the girls in the academy is growing. And because of the functional knowledge that they're being put into the girls' academy over the last 10 years, that is going to pay dividends even quicker than the boys do, if that makes any sense. Like, I know that, the academy for La Masia and the boys are having this. Again, I've talked about the generation that's coming up. It seems like something magical, whatever. But I'm saying the girls have not that investment in coaching and in talent identification that the boys have had. And they've really been new to that over the last, again, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And so the talents that they are building it's hard to argue, even if they go to play for other teams, it's hard to argue that they are one of the top in the world at producing young talents on the women's side of that as well. And that is only going to continue to strengthen this squad in depth. So I'm excited for the present, and I'm super excited for the future as well, because again, I still think that Aitana Bonmatí is arguably the best player in women's football at the moment. And Graham Hansen is almost being snubbed by not finishing top 5 in the women's Ballon d'Or. So as much as I just poured some water on the Barça Femení to start that little conversation, there's nothing but optimism for me in the future.
Perfect. Love it.
Yeah, so I think all we have left to do, again, is promote. Both Robby and I have our membership channels, and we're doing our streams on Big Up. We've been talking about the fact that the Premier League clubs have their tactics board. Robby and I have both been bothering the bigwigs at Big Up to get us a tactics board, and that is going to lead to so much more exciting stuff over there. So we don't know exactly when that's going to debut, but it will be debuting soon. Remember, you could follow his YouTube channel. We tend to do a little bit of different content, so you can absorb all of that in the same week. Remember that for Robby Lowe, his channel is down in the show notes or description, whether you're listening or watching. And then for both of us, it's Twitter, it's Instagram. For me, it's a closed Facebook group, it's Discord, it's Patreon. There's too many places to be involved in both of our communities, so I recommend everybody do that. And if anything else, just subscribe to our YouTube channels. Give us a like on the videos or a good rating on the podcast app. For me, that's a big help. But most importantly, though, thanks, Robby, of course, for joining the show. And thanks to you for listening to the Barcelona podcast. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. And Forza Barça.
Perfect, Dan. Thanks for having me.